morning, everybody, and welcome to the Manage Engine Cybersecurity and IAM online seminar. Um, Thank you all for registering to attend this event today. It's going to be a very interesting event, and we've got some excellent speakers joining us from Manage Engine shortly. Hope everybody is getting on with lockdown. Today is my second day in the office in 6 months, so I had to break the monotony of the dining room table and come in especially for this. But it's good to get out, I must admit, and the sun is shining, or just about. So without further ado, I'm just going to run through a couple of things on the schedule, introduce the speakers, and we'll start the main sessions very shortly. So just on, so this is me, Tim McAlpin from Serverplex, just doing the brief introduction. Serverplex, are, for those who aren't familiar, are the Manage Engine partner in Ireland. We have been working with Manage Engine since well over 10 years now, and we provide sales, support, advice, licensing for the Manage Engine range of products in Ireland. Manage Engine have been purely an excellent company to partner with over that last decade. We work very closely with them and providing informational seminars just like today. Unfortunately, everything's gone virtual and online. Normally, during our yearly plans, we aim to do 3 or 4 of these a year and bring people to a nice hotel and give them lunch. And the guys come in from India and meet customers and talk about their requirements. But those days are over for the time being, and probably won't be back till maybe next year till vaccinations get rolled out a bit more. However, it is what it is, as they say. So in a few minutes, I'll be handing over to Harry, who will be taking us through cybersecurity through machine learning and artificial intelligence. From 12 to 12:45, then we'll be discussing the components of an effective security operations center, collection, ingestion, detection, and response. So basically looking at your logs and acting appropriately. Then at 12:45, we'll be looking at managing Active Directory and Office 365. Obviously, as more organizations are moving to the cloud, then the complexities of managing both comes to a head. So it's not just traditional Active Directory anymore on-prem. So a lot of organizations are looking at a merging of the two and are working in a hybrid environment currently. And then last but not least, we'll be looking at multi-factor authentication to protect your systems, applications, and data. And just to introduce then the speakers today, as I mentioned earlier, we have Harish first up. Harish has been to Ireland many times, and he's been one of our key speakers at other events, physical events we've hosted, also visiting customers. So he's got years of experience. He has some good cheesy jokes normally as well. So hopefully he'll keep you entertained. Then we have Vivian. Vivian's a bit more serious, but again, he has years of experience and talking about the issues facing companies and organizations. They normally do a bit of a double team and come together when they come to Ireland as well. So they're together virtually as well as separate while they're separated physically at the moment. Sharada, then we've been dealing with in the Manage Engine AD Solutions team for years as well, and is experienced in a lot of the products and is a very good presenter. Ram, I know less about. I can't remember Ram being to Ireland or not with all the presentations we've done over the years, but Ram is experienced from the AD Solutions team as well. So without too much further from me, please feel free to engage with the presenters as much as possible. Pose your questions online. There's a Q&A facility within Zoom. But I'm going to hand over to Harry now, who's going to take us up with the first session today about machine learning and artificial intelligence. Thanks very much. Over to you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you. And I hope you all can hear me. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. And Tim, if you could just, thank you.
Yeah, just stopped it there.
Yes, that's perfect. Great. And I hope you all can see my screen and hear me okay. Perfect. I've been given the thumbs up. And people from Ireland, just in case if you're not able to hear me or see my screen, just please leave us a comment in the chat window. We've got an amazing support staff working behind the scenes, and they will do what best they can to ensure that you can hear me and see my screen. So welcome again. Thank you so much, Tim, for the introduction. And as Tim mentioned, Vivin and me, Ram and Sharda, we would love to have done this show in Ireland. Vivin reminisces Guinness. I reminisce the Ireland cricket, the cricket ground Tim took me. So there's a lot of reminiscing that's going on sitting from home, other than getting work done. So thank you so much for having us on board. Before we get into the actual talk, I just wanted to let you all know that we will be cutting off the video feed just to ensure that the bandwidth is not eaten and the quality of the bandwidth gets into the audio and what I'm about to demonstrate through my screen share. All right, so let me quickly cut my video. Fantastic, sweet, but still you should be able to see my screen and hear me okay. With that being said, I am Harish Shekhar, and I usually go by the name Harry. And I'm extremely jealous about Tim being at the office for the second day in about 6 months. I've not been to the office for about a year now. And you know how it is when you sit at home. When you sit alone, there's a different, it's a different ballgame. When you have a family, when you have a kid, and your wife is also working. So there's tantrum, there is trouble all the time. And here I am about to talk about cybersecurity. So just in case if there is a sound or a cry, please do excuse us. We're all doing it from the comfort of our homes. And we sincerely hope and pray that everybody stays calm and things go well, right? So that's my email address. It's harry@manageengine.com. For people who've been a part of my talk, welcome back. For people who are walking in for the very first time, I sincerely hope and pray that the content is informative. Right, I'm going to quickly jump into the agenda, but I'm going to go above and beyond what I have mentioned here, just to drive home the factor that cybersecurity is taking a hit, and every organization is almost on the verge of being attacked. And when we talk about attacks, it's not about a bulldozer walking in, just crashing through the gates. It's about the small loopholes that attackers gain force into, and they break open an organization. So I want to point you all to some resource takeaways where you can share it with your team, get to know more about attacks, how attacks happen through directories, services like on-premise AD, Azure Active Directory, Office 365, because these are the three pillars that people use to initiate work or to get their brand's name outside. So directory services are very, very important. And the second point that I want to focus is Hawkeye view of IT security, attacks and their types, and how to secure your infrastructure and the need for security, orchestration, automation, response, cybersecurity and its importance. So please don't fall away when these jargons are used. I will break down everything nicely for you all just to ensure that when we talk about cybersecurity, the length and breadth is covered. This is where I'm going to take you all today, right? And to give it further, the talk that we have designed today is just not outright product positioning. This is problem-based solution approach. So the problems are real, starting from Australia to Canada, be it Ireland, so the geographies might differ. The problems around IT security or identity access are all the same when we deal with Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. it is all the same. So the problems are real. We have handpicked all these problems, and we would love to have your answers. And just in case, if you are not able to have answers, Vivin, Sharda, Ram, and me are always available to get some answers to you all. We would point you in the right direction at least. And as I promised, all of our talks are tailor-made for problem-based solutions. So take back the problem and ensure that you have answers for them. And in case you need any help, we are always available over an email or a call, or Tim and Jerry could they will be more than happy to assist you all, right? So the resource, as I promised, is right here. This is one of the latest collateral that we've put together, and we have named it IT security under attack. How is this collateral very, very informative for you all? Is there's three forms of information on this specific collateral. One is an attack simulation, two
Harry?
is the attack chain vector, and three is, sure.
Harry, sorry to interrupt. I guess some of the attendees are experiencing problems with the audio. Can you quickly check? Just letting you know.
Sure. Thank you for that. Let me quickly check if things are okay. Is it better now? And honestly speaking, I'm sitting right next to the router, so I'm not sure if anything good has happened now. Is it better now? You guys can hear me okay?
Yep, better.
Fantastic. Yes, it's better, and I sincerely hope and pray that it gets better from here. And thank you. And I didn't look into the chat window. I was so engrossed in delivering my talk. So thanks, Vivin, for the interruption. And I hope things are better now. So what could this resource point to you all is it gives you the various tactics that threat actors use to intrude and persist inside a network. And there are simulations, there are different techniques. This is for your entire IT infrastructure. We are adding more and more videos and how compromise or how an attacker could think, and what are all the telltale signs that as an administrator you need to start blocking or taking action about, right? And there is defense strategy as well. And as I promised, the problems are real. Please take back the problem and have them addressed. So the decks will reach out to you all by the end of the day or by tomorrow with the video recording. So please consume it, and anytime, any help, we are more than happy to get on a call, right? So Hawkeye view of IT security. On the left extreme are platforms, and in between are the connecting points, and on the extreme right are attacks that are happening every now and then. So everybody on this call today or on this webinar, you have endpoints, you have work group machines. Basically under endpoints, you've got on-premise infrastructure, you've got cloud applications. You might have cloud applications, or you just outrightly trust Azure Active Directory or AWS or more. You've got data storage. Of course, if you are a medium and above business, you've got an entire network to take care of. On the extreme right are attacks, and there are three broad classifications: known, unknown, and unknown and mysterious attacks. But in between them, who are the connecting dots? They happen to be the users. These users are people that we know, we learn from, we work with. These are the people under which the attacks get into the organization. They do some damage internally or externally. Perpetrators or attackers read user behavior or what they post or the protocols that's being used across the organization, and they find ways to crack open the organization. Let me give you an example. Let me demonstrate this even better. So here are four people we know, we relate, we work with. And since I opened up my talk saying I've not been to the office for a very long time, let me rekindle the experience of how office used to look. So there's Steve, the marketer. There's Noah, the administrator. There's John from sales. There's Rick from developer. I'm pretty sure at least we would have had conversations, or we would have shared a lunch, or had a cup of coffee with any one of them at some point of time. And let's see what they do. Steve is hero to the masses, produce content, so content king, a melodramatic person. Anything that he writes or tries to sell needs to have a drama in it. Noah, the administrator, the adjectives that you could possibly use for an administrator is stern yet understanding person, problem solver, and organization cannot function without them. And John from sales is a person who loves selling ice to the Eskimos, loves to talk and think. And Rick, the developer, is a silent warrior, speak when spoken to character, loves the beanbag and pizza. But why am I bringing these four characters in this talk today? Is as we speak, one of these four or all of these four or anybody in your organization could be doing any of these activities. So Steve logged into the source code repository late last night and has downloaded data. Noah, the administrator, has downloaded 20 files in the AM and 50 downloads in the PM and another 5 downloads late in the evening. And John from sales, after normal work hours, logged into 10 machines at the same time and installed an application on all of the machines. And Rick, the developer, has been accessing the internal payroll database for the last few weeks. Some could be intentional, some could be unintentional. An attacker could have gained weightage. And I'm going to show you a few hacks. It's slated to come next. But the point here is question number one, are you all paying attention to what your users are doing? Forget the resources, but what are your users doing? There's potentially data is the new gold, but when we talk about data being moved out or being damaged within the organization, there are only a few ways by which things can be done. And one of the epitome or one of the crux of cybersecurity are users. Are you reading your users? Are you following what they do? Are you following the breadcrumbs that every single user leaves when he or she does a particular activity? So this is exactly where I'm going to talk as now and get started. So let's see attacks and their types. Internal, external. When I talk about internal, it's user, a normal user or a privileged user. When we talk about external, it could be a phishing attack, ransomware attack, brute force, or a backdoor entry attack. And there are different ways to steal user credentials. Like there's rogue devices. You could just go ahead. These rogue devices are basically kept in an organization just to steal credentials. There's password spraying. There's default passwords like Tomcat, Jenkins and Co, etc. Default password, missing patches, clear text passwords on file shares, vulnerable web applications, Kerber roasting, social engineering, phishing, man-in-the-middle attack, and vulnerable software versions. So as I'm about to speak, I told you I will perform few hacks live. So let me get into my VM, and this is a setup that I carry, 2012 R2. So let me quickly log in. Perfect, right here. I'll show you an experiment. Last year, I did a password spray attack live in Dublin. When I say last year, it is in 2019 end. So 2020 year of no travel. So let me quickly show you an example. First is Harry, or let's show Tim. I've logged in as Tim to keep the experiment fair and square. Tim is a part of domain admins, so privileged user Tim. So what could Tim do? And at the same time, what could Harish do? Harish is a domain user, has zero privilege. And the way I administer Active Directory is by looking into the TechNet article, least privilege methodology from Microsoft. And that is how you're supposed to administer Active Directory. And with all that's being propagated, I'm going to perform two hacks, one as a privileged user and one as a non-privileged user. All right. So what Tim is doing is he's logged in and he's using command prompt. Right here on this command prompt, Tim is going to start using DS query user-inactive for the past 15 days. So what is Tim doing here? Tim is using command prompt to start querying Active Directory. And Tim right now knows about, there are 7 people who have been inactive for the past 15 days. So what is Tim doing? He's going to go one step further and he's going to go about disabling these 15 users. So right here on this command prompt, Tim is using this as a reporting tool. Tim is using this as a management tool as well. So when I go ahead and use this functionality, it would disable these 7 users. This is for users, groups, computers, contacts. And this DS query is so powerful that by default, things cannot be audited at all. So here's some information, some good information rather. Not everybody can perform DS query. Only on machines where Active Directory domain services are installed, one can perform DS query. So that puts me question number 2 is how many machines have you installed Active Directory domain services? And by default, you cannot query or you cannot identify what has been Tim been up to using DS query because you need to enable certain settings. And this is where things go south, where you have a lot of machines where you have Active Directory domain services installed, and you have to start finding out what went wrong. So this is the first hack. And Tim is not even using Active Directory users and computers. He's using DS query to know what's happening in Active Directory, start managing Active Directory through this tool, like users, groups, computers, contacts, get all the information, and at the same time, start taking actions as well, right? So this is hack 1. And I've given you clear explanation as to why this is hack 1. Are you monitoring your privileged user? And why should you monitor your privileged user? It's because they are privileged. They've got enough privilege than a normal person. So they've got all the tools and access in their hand to break or make your infrastructure, right? So this is my first hack. And hack 2 is, of course, a simple password spray attack. I'm not going to complete the experiment, but I've done this a lot. But here we go. So Harish starts using PowerShell because command prompt and PowerShell are whitelisted applications, and administrators don't have time to audit what's happening through shell or what's happening through command prompt. And by default, they're whitelisted application from Windows 7 and above. You got shell being installed on all of these machines. And the key point is now PowerShell is one of the whitelisted applications that's being used in all form of attacks, ransomware attack, or any form of gateway attacks. Shell is being used and people hardly notice it. And this form of attack is called living off the land attack. My team has done a lot of webinars on how this could prove dangerous to you all. So in case if you're interested, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to let you know how it could break open your organization. So Harish has 0 privilege, but at the same time, what he could do is he could sniff information through PowerShell, what's happening, what privilege he or she has on the domain, who is using a weak password, who are all the privileged users on the domain. You don't have to be a PowerShell guru. You can just quickly learn these queries and start sniffing information. Who am I? And then find out what privilege I have as a user. And you don't have to be a PowerShell guru. And it will tell you what privilege you have. And then you could find out domain admins, space domain, and it'll tell you who are your privileged users. And I can go ahead and start cracking my organization, who's using weak passwords. And of course, many of you still will be using Active Directory for authentication purposes, just a username and password. So that is exactly where I'm saying, are you monitoring your shell activity? Are you monitoring your command prompt activity? So right here, as I told you, this is going to be a problem-based solution approach. Let me just quickly run this. And I go into server audit. And this is an application from Manage Engine. It's called AD Audit Plus, and it's a real-time solution. So what I'm going to do is policy tracking, new process created. And for the last minute, second, whoever does anything, everything is under radar. DS query, whoever performed it, it was Tim, date and time, what level of elevation was used, what query was performed. Everything is noted, everything is documented, and you get an email, and through an email, you can start taking actions as well. So what I can do is I could go ahead and quickly find out who did what, when, where, and I could execute a script. I could automate tasks for management operations. So just in case if it's a non-business hour, people using Shell, if it's a non-business hour, people using command prompt or a DS query, you can start taking action. So this is for the first hack on DS query, and see how important informations were captured. And two is for PowerShell, we've got a dedicated tab where you can find out process tracking, script log logging, whoever used Shell for the last 1 hour, what did he or she do? You can find out the details and the metadata using what was run in that script. And we can even find out module logging. Everything is real time, who did what, when, where. But my setup is I've kept it for 5 minutes. I'll show it to you in just a quick second. Right here, yeah, it is real time and it's listening to all of it, and every single shell activity performed on the domain, be it on the workstation, domain controller, file servers, member servers, endpoints, everything is tracked, and you get an email notification when things go south. And my 2 cents to you all is, if anybody needs pop shell activity or shell to get work done, start noticing them. It is always good to have reports, because at the end, top management always believes in reporting, and they need answers when things fall apart. Find out the breadcrumbs. So this is my third question. My first question, I'm just going to reiterate, is starting with your user behavior. Are you following what he or she is doing? Are you following their breadcrumbs? Are you able to connect the dots? 2 is the number of machines you've installed Active Directory domain services. 3 is, are you monitoring shell and command prompt activities? And do you have real-time answers when people do what they're not supposed to do? For instance, if a password spray script was run, how are you going to go ahead and notify or take action, right? So what are organizations doing as we speak? Current organizational ecosystem is, you've got intrusion prevention, which only understand packets protocols. You've got endpoint security files, which takes care of usernames and hosts. You've got services, service logs, shows user login, service activity and configuration changes. You've got asset management, which sees applications, business processes, and owners. But none of these by themselves can tell you what's happening in your business. So this is exactly where you need an SIEM, or a security incident information management system, or a solution that can put everything into perspective, get all the logs, and start reaping information and start connecting the dots. So this is where I've got some recommendations for people who are using directory services, especially relying on Microsoft. On the left, it's for the on-premise AD, and on the right is you got Azure Active Directory. So if on-premise Active Directory is bread and butter, you can follow Microsoft best practices for Active Directory. I've hyperlinked it. That's a great read, and I follow that, and that's how I've administered my Active Directory. Limit administrative rights on workstations and restrict access to PowerShell. Restricting access to critical resources like domain controller, file servers, and member servers. Understand vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, especially patching. And for people who are yet to patch their machines, there's a netlogon vulnerability, and I've hyperlinked that. The final answer is yet not out. There is a work do patch that has been released last year, and the final complete patch will be released this year. That's what Microsoft is saying. So please stay up to date, because with that netlogon vulnerability, all an attacker needs to do is just be a part of your network, and they don't even have to authenticate. That is how critical that vulnerability is. It's called netlogon or zero logon vulnerability. And please do understand, patching and system configurations come with consequences. So learn when to patch, or understand patching first. All right, this is for your on-premise AD. And when you move into the Azure Active Directory space, restrict access to administration portal, restrict access to Azure portal through conditional access, And as I give you some recommendations on Azure, here is what I'm about to show you right here. Log into Azure Active Directory. These are recommendations, with just the time that I'm given, I will give you the length and breadth of where I want you all to start digging, but I will be more than happy to go deeper on a call or a one-on-one later during the day or later during the week, right? So this is Azure Active Directory. And when we deal with administration portal, you can restrict access to Azure AD portal. So what you need to do is hover your mouse over the information icon, and I want you to process the last two lines, but does not restrict such access using PowerShell or another client such as Visual Studio. So what I'm about to do is open up PowerShell, and I am going to connect Azure AD, and I don't even need a URL. I don't even need a browser. I can just use shell and I can log in. And here is a little bit of more inspiring information is by default, you cannot identify shell-based login activity into Azure. So these are things which you all have to pay attention to. How are people logging into Azure? How are people logging into your on-premise AD? How much time are they spending? How much time, how is the lateral movement? All of this needs to be connected. And this is where you have to understand your hybrid infrastructure with a whole new perspective, right? Let's get going into a few more recommendations. App registration. Please ensure these recommendations are being followed. You don't want a non-privileged user to create application, but still be able to collect information from all of your users. So this is why you need to go ahead and spend about 5 to 10 minutes once you start setting up Azure. There are some recommendations that are already available. You don't need to pay for them. But if you want to go above, then your on-premise AD, do conditional access, do password, write back, do multi-factor authentication, do a lot more protocols and policies in place. Everything comes with an additional licensing, in fact, a premium licensing. So let me give you more insights onto your Azure AD. Deploy Azure MFA to all end users, protect your Azure AD Connect server, eliminate security threats by following Microsoft Secure Score, and deploy privileged identity management. But please do note all of the recommendations except the first is all with the premium licensing. But if you are using the free version of Azure, there is something called security default, which does come with few protocols, and that is still good to have. And there are some limitations as well. For instance, if you're using MFA, you just have Microsoft Authenticator to authenticate with, that's it. And then on the security defaults, you can eliminate weak protocols. Like in Windows 10, you got an Outlook, the authentication protocol, because Microsoft believes it's through the weak authentication protocol that attacks happen. So from my perspective, you need to start monitoring which authentication protocol comes in, like NTLM or Kerberos or OAuth, or what are the authentication that people use to get into your directory services. This is exactly where a SIEM solution does its job, right? With so much of recommendation being made, why is it so difficult to maintain IT security, right? So this is where we need to go deeper and understand that security and productivity, though they might rub off the same wall, there is a thin difference. Security is the right people have right access to the resource. Productivity is timely access to the right resource, right? So as an auditor or as a data protection officer, one needs to understand these 3 points. What are users doing with these access? Are there effective controls for monitoring access? Compliance, auditing. Do you have security orchestration response when there is an attack, or when there is a data manipulation, or when there is a false positive, or when there is a breach that is coming in? Do you have actions ready? Because it's about how quick you get back once you fall. So these are the 3 parameters that you need to take action in order to monitor your hybrid infrastructure. And getting deeper into on-prem AD, and through that, I will shift gears into Azure Active Directory as well. Now that everybody is working from home, VPN remote access will be my first point of contact. And what are all the breadcrumbs that you need to pay attention to? You need to focus on user logon activity, radius logon activity, or remote gateway activity. These are the Microsoft ways at logging into your domain. But if you have other third-party VPNs that you're using, we do take care, you should monitor, but let me explain the logic behind how things operate. So there are two events, one on the VPN gateway server and one would be on the endpoint itself. So these are the connecting dots that you need to pay attention to, and you can start focusing on how did a user log in? Was it remote interactive? Was it physically interactive? Through the user logon activity category type, and account logon category can be mentioned, can be understood, and through that you can verify how he or she logged in. Radius logon activity is one step higher, where you got a dedicated server and you can put in policies such as like a firewall, which IP address to leave, which user to give access to. And remote gateway activity is purely like MSTSC, where you connect to a hosted server, which is talking to a certificate, and it's encrypted. And of course, you can add more conditions. But the point here is you have to start documenting or start tracking when a failure happens, what is the reason of the failure, and who did that from where. These are the points that you need to pay attention to, because they're no longer at the office, they're all connecting from the comforts of their home. So are things going well? Even because back in the days, people hardly noticed false positives. So my recommendation here is let the tool or your SIM solution start monitoring failures, start monitoring successes, and then connect the dots. Because when of course these SIM solutions or your organizations right now are talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and they're extremely good at analyzing how much failures and how much successes, what is the ratio that we are talking about. Because 4 login failures is not an attack. It could possibly be a user who has forgotten their password, or they're not keeping well and their hands are shivering and they're typing in the wrong MFA, the code, the OTP that's coming into their phone. But the tool needs to assess, or the solution needs to assess, though 4 might not be an attack, but should always be ready to predict what's going to happen, what is wrong, why is this happening consecutively on a Monday morning? Is it happening every Monday morning, or is it happening every day? So these are things that your SIM solution must give you answers for. And similarly, it's for your RDP as well, remote gateway protocol. What happens is one of the key car making companies in the world was breached because one of their machines was available over the internet. And that's how Snake ransomware was propagated as well. All of the information is available online. Please give it a read. And that tells you hosting a machine might look easier, but at the same time is posing a threat if not done really well, if you're not monitoring what's happening, right? So what do users do once they crack open an organization, like a brute force attack through VPN or through a password spray attack? They sit and they scour your organization for information. This is where domain recon attempts are picking up. So as Harish, I found out who are my privileged users. I found out what privilege I have, what I could do, what I shouldn't do. Everything was clear through the commands. I can find out my privileged resources. I can find out what policies are put for my domain controller, what policies are put for my users, and I can start serving the domain for critical information, right? So, and the third lateral movement that could possibly happen is through security group membership in Active Directory. Security groups are powerful. And when you install Active Directory, you get domain admins, schema admins, enterprise admins. And when you install Exchange, SQL, there are a lot of groups that come in. That's group configuration 2 and group configuration 3 are your custom groups. Could be like a help desk group in Active Directory. And 4 are nested group membership. When I say nested, indirectly vesting permission on a user through a group which is connected to a superior group. And do you know that a group, unnoticed group, or your nested group membership could give admin access? Are you paying attention to all of your groups, or potentially what could be going wrong? Example, as I told you, there is a group called help desk and every single organization might be having it. Help desk, double click members, and if I add a user CEO to this group, I'm not sure how many of you will be happy, or I'm not even sure how many of you will be like, oh, why should we bother about this specific group? But when we click on the member of, you've got domain admins. So these members are a part of domain admins. So when you do such activity, or when a person or a technician does such activity, everything must be under radar. You should be notified instantaneously. So example, my phone will be buzzing right now that this activity has happened. So let me go into group management, recently modified groups, Tim, who did what, when, where, and everything is under radar. Let me quickly go ahead. This is run now. Yes, let me go into reports. Recently modified groups. April 20, you can look into my timestamp, you can look into my clock, and who did what. Help desk was modified by Tim, which user was added. You can get a real-time email notification or an SMS, and every single alert can trigger a counter operation to mitigate that process as well. So this is where we have taken AD Audit Plus to start being not just notifying or not just finding out what went wrong, to start taking actions to kind of predict or to take it to give security incident a whole new definition. So this is where we're taking AD Audit Plus. And let me go into a few more insights. And not to leave the internal perspective, detect security permission changes, domain level permission changes, container permission changes, OU permission changes, GPO permission changes, user groups, computer permission changes. Anything anyone does in Active Directory, it's under radar. Because when you deal with ADUC, right click, I go into users, delegate control, next, add CEO, next, and modify group membership, next, and finish. There is no undo button, or there is no reporting tool where I can find out what I just did right now. And if you have multiple administrators, then this becomes extremely difficult to find out what privilege was given to that specific user. So what we have done is right here. I'm going to keep this real time. It's just that it's my VM. I don't want it to feed up logs. So what I'm about to do is go into reports, membership, permission changes, OU permission changes for the last 30 days, or container permission changes, user, date and time. Tim did the change, remark, CEO was added, and what permission was given to that person. Everything is tracked and is put under the radar. So this is exactly where we are taking all of the information are a part of your logs. It's about just looking at them and taking action, connecting them together, right? So this is more insights into your AD. And then other important activities to track is group policy changes, deep group policy changes, even noticing the version level, password policy change, or account policy change, take action of what went wrong, then file integrity monitoring with filter added, and then monitor electronic traffic during non-business hours. permissions, privilege changes, account lockout, Active Directory federated service auditing, disabled user logon attempt, and password never expired enabled, and login failures for admin users. And one specific report which I always love showing is account lockouts, where we can find out the actual reason, or we can narrow down reasons why an account uh, is possibly getting locked out. We look into 10 plus components like Windows service, schedule, task, network, drive mapping, logon sessions, COM objects, process list, applications, OWA, active sync, and find out the possible reason. And this is exactly why many organizations trust AD Audit Plus, because this is one of the signature component that help people understand why an account is getting locked out. And this is also for your user login failures. We just don't tell you it's a failure. We even start analyzing, looking into 10 different components. So just ensure that you have the sufficient logs being coming into AD Audit Plus, and we would be able to take action. All right. Diving deep, shifting gears into Office 365. Many people that breathe Microsoft know that Office 365, Azure Active Directory, the security enhancements were great in Office 365 and has been immensely great in Azure, but they were subject to a breach even by enabling multi-factor authentication. And for people getting reports about the possible reason, was it brute force, was it remote shell, was it a password spray attack, was it a failed MFA login attempt, Microsoft wanted people to go ahead and enable threat intelligence, which is a part of the E5 license. So forget the cost that is associated with that. That's a whooping amount. But what we thought is, since then, we wanted AD Audit Plus to monitor the hybrid infrastructure from one pane of glass, eliminate all hassles like logging, beefing up of log size, multiple toggling between consoles. So all of this has been eliminated, and we give you answers for brute force attack or remote PowerShell attack or password spray attack or failed MFA attempt for your Office 365, for your Azure Active Directory from the same pane of glass, right? And few more reports on Azure Essentials, important reports that you must have answers for. Login activity by a user when with multi-factor authentication disabled, because in Azure, when you jump into the portal, which I showed you before, there is no one-click button which tells you all of the users for which MFA has been disabled. So that tells you the complexity. So for which you need to understand the event codes, how will you correlate that to a user, and you need to take actions. Login activity by your user with MFA disabled, global admin account, log on without MFA, and put deeper conditions like conditional policy failure or user login from unknown locations, unauthorized access into application by a user account, external user activity auditing. In Azure, for a guest account, you can start sharing resources and the collaboration can kickstart, and the guest in turn can share it with another guest. So that opens up the floor for some security concerns. So these are all points which you need to consume really well. And last but not least is for the hybrid infrastructure, MFA disabled for domain admin user. For an on-premise account, the most important account, domain admins, if they don't have if they have MFA disabled or they're just logging in using username and password, you need to get a notification, right? And giving back answers to where I started for the user behavior analytics. Are you understanding user behavior? Is every single entity that he or she might step into, be it Windows, switches, routers, firewalls, or your databases, or it could be a critical infrastructure or a web server, they leave breadcrumbs. So this is where you need to build baselines, and this is the introduction of machine learning, a signature step towards artificial intelligence, where you can pay attention to what he or she is doing, basically setting up virtual cameras And what this does, it draws baseline about what he or she is doing starting day one. And it sits and pays attention to everything that he or she does. And once it has a standard base or definition of baseline, it starts throwing flags that Harish, on every Monday, he logs in at 7, is suddenly logging in at 10 a.m. Again, I'm not saying these are threats, but these are anomalies which could possibly lead open into a threat. So this is where you need to find analytics, find out risk assessment or anomalies. So all of this is a part of AD Audit Plus, the one that I demonstrated, performed, showed, and there's a lot that I could talk about when we deal with AD Audit Plus alone. And that comes bundled with Log 360, which is our integrated SIM solution from Manage Engine. I covered AD Audit Plus, at least the surface of the length and breadth of what this tool could do. There's a lot more, and I would be more than happy to get on a one-on-one conversation. So I'll be looking forward to your email. And Ram, who is about to come next, will go deeper into the event log module, but he's got problems as well, as I kept mentioning from the beginning. So there's something that we all need to understand, that all of the informations are there in the logs. It's about how we bring them together and start taking actions, right? So with that being said, one last time, that's my email address, harry@manageengine.com.